you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Hey, everybody. Welcome to whatever this podcast is. I am your morbidly obese host. I'm not even going to say my name. But hey, Sci-Fi at the Strand is presenting Don't Lose Your Head, a double feature happening Saturday, July 23rd at the Strand Theater, which is at 165 Main Street in Seymour, Connecticut, for our international listeners. And joining me is Mr. Sci-Fi at the Strand himself, John Marini. Welcome back to the podcast, John.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, so let's get right into it. What are the two movies that you're showing? Which is first? Which is second? What controversy can we use to sell tickets for this thing? What's going on?
Excellent. So, Eugene, we got two of your favorites, Conan the Barbarian, the original classic from the early 80s, and also the original Highlander. Both of these movies have something in common, right? It's a lot of decapitation and a lot of lost heads. So we're calling it Don't Lose Your Head Night. And the good news here is it's all for charity. So whatever you feel about dismemberment, all the proceeds of the show are going to go to charity.
You're losing your skeleton.
Knights of Columbus. And I got a special guest with us. I have, I guess, one of the long lost kings of Atlantis from the Conan movie. He's a little skeletal. But the reason he's here is because we have some awesome raffle prizes for this particular show. And like Larry Dwyer's Cult Classics, we always do an intermission raffle. You know, that other movie night at the Strand. But for this show in particular, I think we have some nifty stuff. We actually have Conan's sword. We have 3 replicas of Conan's Atlantean sword. As last seen, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but as last seen in Stranger Things.
Oh, that's right. They're saying
So
that's what Harbor the Cop.
That far. Yep, if you made it that far.
Yeah,
the original prop from the original Conan the Barbarian appears in Stranger Things. But we have 3 replicas for the raffle. And that's not all. We have 3 replicas of Connor McLeod's sword as well, the katana, right? And this is really interesting, Eugene, because I thought the Conan sword is sort of foam, right? It's a toy. And I ordered these from Amazon, and I suspected that this would be a toy as well. But they gave me real swords.
Oh, that's good.
I think for the first and only time, we're going to have some real weapons.
Good job, Amazon.
At the Strand.
Thanks
so
for
we're going to have to
safe.
figure out. So if
Hold on, my kid just ordered that. Hold on.
So please bring your parents' permission if you're going to win one of these.
Now, and then
who's the character?
Wait, who's the character, John? Who's the character that second one? I know Conan. Who's the character from the
Connor McLeod of the Clan McLeod. Certainly, you're familiar with Highlander.
Christopher Lambert. I saw it once, but is that Christopher
Lambert?
Character?
Yep.
All right. Yep. Sorry. All right. What else you got?
And although we have raffle prizes, but we have some free giveaways. These are the prototypes. We have a poster. You've seen this poster.
Yeah, it's a cool poster. Don't lose your head.
Choose this one, which has Conan and Connor McLeod, right? Or you could choose the bad guys. Thulsa Doom.
James Earl Jones, and what's his name? Clancy Brown, the voice of SpongeBob.
Yep. So we have some free posters. We can have raffle prizes like the swords, or like this tin poster of Highlander that would look really great in your room behind you, Eugene. See? And even VHS, right? This is Conan the Destroyer, but we still have some retro.
Oh, look at that. Is that the one with Grace Jones, Conan the Destroyer?
It is. Yep, this is the sequel. The more kid-friendly sequel.
So, and then, all right, how do I get tickets and what time does it start and all that good stuff? I know it's coming up this Saturday.
7 o'clock. So this Saturday night, Strand Theater, Seymour. Start time is 7 o'clock. Of course, we're going to be doing trailers, classic sword and sorcery trailers this time before both movies. The raffle is going to be in the middle. We're going to show the Highlander first, and Conan as the main feature.
Just get that out of the way. All right. So anybody listening, like, I love Conan the Barbarian. I mean, that I remember distinctly seeing that as a kid when it came out on VHS. You know, that was a big deal. But I mean, I'll just admit my bias. I saw Highlander once, and I just never bothered watching it again. I'm not a big fan, but it is interesting looking into Highlander specifically. I mean, here's the thing about Christopher Lambert. The guy makes Greystoke, right? The Legend of Tarzan. Terrible, unforgivably bad movie. Then he makes Highlander, and then after that, he stars in The Sicilian, which is No one's ever made it to the end of that movie. No one has watched The Sicilian from start to finish. So since then, I've never been able, I still hold a grudge for that against Christopher Lambert. So I've never seen anything else he's ever been in. I guess he's still working today. Is he still alive?
I believe so.
All right. So that's my bias.
Raise an interesting question, Eugene. Although, I'll
Maybe
say
he'll
the
be
second Highlander, was the dip in quality, right?
Yeah, and the movie, the guy that directed it, I was just looking him up. He was like right out of MTV. We're talking like the Culture Club, Elton John era, Duran Duran era of early MTV. And he gets Highlander, and then he just goes on to really, now he's doing like, I don't know, 13 Reasons Why, some Netflix show. He didn't exactly go on to a huge career, but he's working nonetheless.
Hard
but
to follow
why
up
Highlander? Like,
right?
I guess my question is, because you go back and you read the reviews, and I remember Highlander came out, it got pretty bad reviews. But if you look now, like on a Rotten Tomatoes, it's certified fresh. And if you look at the people reviewing the movie in like the last 10 years, it goes from, 0 out of 4 when upon its release to now 4 out of 5 and 5 out of 5. Clearly, new generations of people love this movie. What is it about Highlander? What am I not getting?
I think it's the concept, right? You either love the concept or you don't. And the concept essentially must have been written by a middle schooler, because it involves immortal warriors cutting each other's heads off until there's only one. And the film's scored by Queen. The Queen soundtrack plays through most of the movie. It's really a comic bookish style of a film. And there's a lot to love if you suspend your disbelief and just kind of get into the sword fights and the crazy sci-fi and fantasy mixed with it. I think a lot of the fandom following up on the movie was really also into the TV series, the cable TV series that went for season after season. It's a crazy concept and a crazy idea, but if you buy into it, it's a lot of fun.
I'm surprised, and maybe they have, because I'm not even familiar with the franchise. Oh, by the way, the director, he went on to make one of the 1,000 Resident Evil movies. But so maybe this happened already, but have there been any talks of bringing Highlander back as a feature film?
Not that I'm up on. I wouldn't be surprised.
Now, who would you cast if you had to? If you're the casting director, you're financing the movie, producer Marini, who are you putting in the lead?
A modern day Highlander? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. That can go into
you could have Lambert play the Sean Connery
modern day
role.
Christopher Lambert. Yeah, you got to have the mentor character for the Sean Connery, and you got to have that someone Scottish, would help to add some more.
Throw in one of the kids from. Oh, I got it. Make it. Who's the kid that became like? He was a jerk in the first half of the first season of Stranger Things, and then he's really he's like the mom.
Oh yeah, Steve, right? Yeah, Steve.
Do Steve as Highlander. That's what I'm saying.
Character.
That would work.
Yeah, he can be that. That's possible.
Get his transition into action film. All right, what I did pull, and maybe you'll get a kick out of this. I was looking back at like how I love Roger Ebert, and I love to go back and see how Roger Ebert either, sometimes you think he's just going to hate a film, and it turns out he loves it. Like with Gremlins, I did a podcast at Gremlins, fully thinking, oh, Roger Ebert's going to tear this thing apart, and he's like, this is the greatest movie ever. So I went back and I looked for Highlander to do. We'll just play a quick clip of Ebert reviewing Highlander back in the day with Mr. Gene Siskel. So I'm going to share that, and it's going to go to the wrong thing. Those are all my notes. All 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the magic. All right, here we go. Here's Ebert on Highlander.
That's what you think of Highlander. I'm going to give my opinion, which is this is sort of like a garage sale at the house of a berserk screenwriter.
You got
this
it.
Movie has a little bit of everything. Immortality, sword fights, ancient legends, muscular heroes, exploding automobiles, wise old men, beautiful women, bloody beheadings, and lightning crackling through the sky. It has an especially lot of beheadings and lightning. In fact, occasionally people's fingertips just tingle with all of the excess electrical energy in the story. The story involves a race of immortals, men who can be killed in only one way, by having their heads chopped off with a sword. And in this scene, Christopher Lambert plays...
Well, that's interesting right there. It's still playing on my end. I just got to stop it. But Ebert, we didn't get to whether he gave it a thumb up or a thumb down, but he's smiling as he's reviewing that. He basically said exactly what you said as the positives of this movie. You just have to go in ready to have a good time with a movie that is basically, all right, I'll call it trash, but it's purposeful, meaningful trash. It's not pretending to be anything other than what it is.
It's pulp movie making, right? It's pulp movie making. It's got a crazy bonkers concept. It's completely nuts, and it doesn't pretend to be anything other than that. It's got some classic themes, right? You could see these kind of themes going back for how many movies, the guy that needs to be trained, fights the evil. Some classic movie making, Eugene, I'd say.
And then switching over to Conan. Conan is in a lot of ways bonkers as well. But I don't know, maybe it's just one of those things where my opinion of the movie was shaped when I first saw it. Now, when I first saw it, it scared the bejesus out of me. These people show up, cut off somebody's head, and then they tie this kid to the wheel of pain. It's pretty out there. And it's
a classic coming of age story of a young barbarian and his journey to fight evil wizards and save his kingdom.
But it takes itself not too seriously. It has a sense of humor, but compared to Highlander, it's more grounded in some type of reality.
I think Conan has a little more of a philosophical purpose, right?
Written and directed by John Milius, the great John Milius, which I didn't realize he directed that. And
I think it has, that philosophical, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger mentality going into it. And I think there's a little more of an intent here. But, looking back on it, it spawns this entire generation of sword and sorcery films in the 80s. A lot of them Italian, and some of them are going to be featured in our trailers for Saturday night to look back. Most of them are awful, right? Most of them are terrible. Hercules, probably the most ridiculously terrible of them, with Lou Ferrigno, who thought he could match Arnold Schwarzenegger and ends up doing two of his own Italian Hercules movies. Lou really
refused me an autograph in a bar once. He wouldn't give me an autograph. It's whatever, Lou, your loss.
Yeah, it's an interesting genre to look back on, but Conan is really the touchstone of that element. But we've done He-Man in the past. I think that's all connected in a way.
It's from this movie, right?
What it was if it wasn't for Conan. I think that all that sort of launched from this movie, and certainly Arnold Schwarzenegger's career was boosted big time.
He's perfectly cast.
This is iconic, exactly.
It's an example of just perfect casting. And he had it twice early in his career. The most improbable movie star in the history of cinema is definitely Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he gets Conan and then the Terminator, two roles he seems born for. I wonder sometimes, how much did Schwarzenegger do for steroid sales in the 80s? Because I remember in high school, like, all my friends were taking steroids left. I mean, not me. But I'd love to know, has there ever been a study that you're aware of in your municipal experience where they look at how much steroid use came from these Conan movies?
I know we could order a feasibility study, but at this point, we're far removed from the 80s. But between that, pro wrestling, again, it was
Stallone
at the time. Yep, read the Rambo films. I mean, what it meant to be an action star, what it meant to look like an action star in the 80s is really not the same as it is today. And you have guys like The Rock out there, but then you have a lot of other action heroes who would have looked out of place in the mid 80s if you were building them up in a major blockbuster sci-fi fantasy action film. There was just a typecast.
And bringing it back to my old pal, Roger Ebert, rest in peace, Mr. Ebert, greatest film critic of all time. How many stars do you think Ebert gave Conan the Barbarian upon its release in whatever it was, 1982, I think? Let's say out of 5, I think he was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, with him, it's either he really likes it or he really sticks it to the film, right? If he doesn't feel that it's, in Ebert early on, it seemed like he was much more about the message, right? He would really object to things if he felt it was the wrong message, regardless of the filmmaking. And you saw that with a lot of horror films, I think.
Hated gratuitous violence.
But at other times, he's like a little kid in a candy store, like with Highlander. So early on, hard to say, right? It could be nothing. You could give it a half a star, a star.
All right, Mr. Lawyer, you're talking on, you're making the argument.
I'm covering all contingencies here.
So what do you say? Give me a number. How many stars?
I'll go with, I cannot remember how he reviewed it. So I'm going to go on the lower end that he thought it was, probably thought it was dismissed it.
How many stars? Give me a number.
One. He goes for one. He goes for
3.
one.
He gave it 3.
Oh, all right.
He actually, he was more enthusiastic. It's an interesting review to read because he's like, this is the greatest movie made for like 14-year-old me, and he likes all like the female aspect of it. It's a little creepy. I'll be honest with you. The review is a little creepy, but I guess, again, that was Ebert. There's another thing I wanted to play with you, and maybe you have seen this. Let me see if I can do this without messing it up. But I guess John Milius, who, by the way, I just learned this from Google, so it's probably just everyone probably knows this. John Milius, the writer director of Conan the Barbarian, he wrote Apocalypse Now. He wrote there's a great documentary called Milius. I think it's on Amazon Prime. Seek that out. He's a real character. He wrote Dirty Harry. He did one of the rewrites on Dirty Harry. Essentially, that all comes from him. The character of Walter in The Big Lebowski, I never knew this until
Based
like
off
10.
of him.
Is based off John Milius. So that's what type of guy he is. There is a great, I guess they did a commentary, Milius and Schwarzenegger at some point. I believe Milius is ill now. I don't know if he's lost his ability to communicate, but anyway, seek out that documentary. But they did a commentary. And so somebody on YouTube, God bless YouTube, they just sort of cut it down to the funny parts. So I just want to play this real quickly and have a laugh. Wait, what did I do? Hold on, I got to bring it up again. I mess this up every time. Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to share the screen again. It's happening, by the way. We're talking about Sci-Fi at the Strand, happening Saturday, July 23rd at the Strand Theater, 165 Main Street, Seymour, Connecticut.
What was the reason of the Wheel of Pain? What
they're grinding grain,
Grinding grain, okay. And
can you hear that, John?
Grinding grain.
the grain was for food and all that stuff, okay. And where were they getting the grain from? Whatever happened to Ben Davidson?
He's around somewhere.
Why didn't you do a close-up on her when she was talking there? Look at the chain.
Yeah.
What do you call it? The
chainmail.
Chainmail, yeah, exactly. What do you call those?
The demons.
The demons. I know, but then how do you keep them in focus?
Well, by getting far enough back from him.
Oh, from me. Does the kid wear lipstick or what is that?
I don't know. I had to mute my mic because I was coughing and laughing. But anyway,
fairly curious about some of the directorial decisions there.
Arnold Schwarzenegger he really is. I still love him because he is Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is just Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's nobody else like him. So, and I guess I should ask you, John, just in terms of deciding to pick Highlander and Conan, I mean, are these movies that you were particularly that had a big impact on you growing up? In where
Conan, I saw
Ridgefield
pretty early, right? As a kid, Conan the Barbarian as a kid. And again, it just kind of sticks with you as being, one of those epic movies, but it has the edge to it, right? So it's a fantasy movie, but yeah, it's not a kid's movie. It's definitely not a kid's movie. And I think that edge kind of stands out. Highlander, the movie itself, again, over the top, just memorable, right? You're going to tell your friends about a plot like that.
And it hit you as a kid when you first saw it? It was something like personally.
As a kid, I stood out to me. The series was actually something that I watched a little bit later, right? I think on the USA Network, they used to put it, right? And it was just, again, an interesting concept that wasn't your everyday fantasy action movie.
All right, let's see. It's a celebrity death match, but we're talking about movie franchises. Well, I guess one's a franchise. Beastmaster versus Highlander. Who wins there? Who comes out on top?
I go Highlander there.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. I'll have to go with you.
Beastmaster's a good movie, but I think Highlander's just got that. Beastmaster still does come kind of in the wake of the Conan in the 80s Sword and Sorcery. I think Highlander adds a bit to the genre. Not right. I'm not going to call them ripoffs. So many movies owe a debt to other movies, and to call them ripoffs. Ator the Fighting Eagles, a Conan ripoff, right? And does it add much? Probably not. Beastmaster adds more, but Highlander's kind of takes the swordplay, right, and the craziness and does something a bit different. At the very least, it's different, right? It's going in a direction that you wouldn't expect.
I give extra points to the Beastmaster only because of that mugshot of Rip Torn that came out years later with his hair all askew. I just admire that mugshot, Rip Torn. I think that was in a coverage area that I worked at one point as a reporter. But all right, so there's plenty of raffle prizes because you guys do a good job. Well, you guys, whoever is involved in this, I know you are, and I assume there's others. But I love that the Valley is becoming, or is this place to see these eclectic movies. You know, you mentioned Connecticut Cult Classics, which has been playing now for years at the Strand Theater. If you're into, classic cult movies and other types of films, check that out on Facebook. And then, John, you've been doing Sci-Fi at the Strand and Godzilla screenings, and now moving into these sword and sorcery movies. And then you have, I saw this on Facebook, coming up at some point, and this, I'm really excited about this, the Ansonia Drive-In at Pulaski, what's it called? Pulaski Park? Did I just say that right?
It's Warsaw Park on Pulaski Highway.
Sorry about that. My mind went blank. But you have Night of the Living Dead.
So the end of this month. So it's the last Saturday of the month. I think that is that's like the 30th. I believe that's Saturday, the 30th. So it's not this weekend, it's the next weekend. So 2 Saturdays away.
You're right, the 30th. Yeah, the 30th.
The drive-in, right? We did the drive-in concept during COVID, had a lot of fun with that. And we figured, let's bring it back for a special event here. The Cultural Commission really kind of brought this idea to the forefront of having zombies on hand. So not only will we be screening the classic George Romero original Night of the Living Dead, but we're going to do it in zombie vision, which I think it's going to be interesting to see how this exactly works out. But the plan is to have zombies in the flesh roving around at the theater. So hopefully this will be a very unique presentation of this film.
So does that mean
with all these movies, Eugene, whether it be The Strand or the things we're doing in Ansonia, it's about giving people something to do rather than just being behind their computer screens and on their phones. And I think there's a real need to actually be with other people, right? To get together, to get excited about a real event. In fact, in Ansonia, we were just talking about like the difference taking hold, malls closing down or partially shutting for apartments. You don't have really the same gathering spaces or the events that bring people together that you may have had regularly in the past. So these special events, I think, become even more important. And it's part of the reason why, we're keeping at them, to bring people together, to bring like-minded people together and get something unique, something different about what we're offering here in the Valley as opposed to anywhere else.
Yeah, they just had in Ansonia at the Ansonia Army was Paracon 2 just happened. The Amazing Kreskin was there. The Amazing Kreskin, who I watched all the time back on the Johnny Carson show, who I believe he's 120. He's something like that.
He's on there.
In a couple of years.
He knows exactly what's in future for him, for himself. And so he has a confidence in terms of how long he's got.
Okay. All right. That's good.
He can tell the future.
He's Kreskin. And then you've got, all right. Yeah. Rock the Valley's coming back, right? What are the two other two events? Yeah. Is that August? Are there 2 events going at the same? Oh no, the Harvest Festival. If somebody wants to be a vendor, you can.
September.
Okay. So August, Rock the Valley. And then in September, the Harvest Festival. But before that, you have Sci-Fi at the Strand coming up July 23rd. And then next weekend, Saturday, July 30th, Night of the Living Dead is playing at the Ansonia Drive-In. So much going on. John, is there anything else you want to add? I'm a little podcasted out the last couple of weeks. I did a podcast on some municipal stuff and then Derby municipal stuff. And then I interviewed the guy who made the movies that made us. I got harassed on Twitter by fandom geeks over that. So I apologize if my performance.
You did a great job on that one. That was some great material. There's been a lot of things happening, I think, in the Valley over the summer. Sometimes people think things slow down over the summer, but it hasn't been the case locally. One project after the other. But I would just add, we have some terrific sponsors for the event. Yeah. Sci-Fi at the Strand, right? And it's charity, so it's great to see, folks coming together for a good cause. But everything from Terrificon, which is going to be at Mohegan Sun on the 29th through the 31st of this month. Shocking Things Podcast, which is another podcast covering everything pop culture from Twilight Zone to Highlander. New Haven Comics and Collectibles Show. Their next show is going to be October 22nd, but another great thing in the Valley area for those into comics and pop culture. And speaking of that, we know the Pint and Pinto Comics, just a great group of
Well,
people.
no, wait, hold on.
Online
Are
and
you
on the
talking
radio.
the Pint or the Pint of
Both.
pop culture?
Pint,
Both.
Pint and Pinto Comics.
I
So the
thought
radio
they were. I
show
thought they had
and
I thought the court settlement that they had negotiated means they can't appear on the same thing together. That's not true.
we're mentioning them separately here today.
I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
Covering both angles. You can check both of them out.
I'll edit them out. Don't worry.
Alternate Universe Comics in Milford, right? And they also have a location in New Haven, but great location to pick up comic books and to catch up on all this stuff. Con Skipper is a new sponsor. They actually, if you can't make
What's that?
So if you can't make a convention, they cover it. So if you want to check out, say, hey, I wasn't able to show up at the Terrificon, they'll actually give you a review, pictures, kind of show you what you missed. But they're
For a
website
fee?
that covers no, they're just a website that covers.
Oh,
conventions.
gotcha. Okay.
You can go to conskipper.com and check it out. Arrow Printers is helping with our posters. So Arrow
That's
Printers
Ansonia
is
based,
on Main
right?
Street,
That's
Ansonia. Yep, Dave Conti, who actually
very
won a
cool.
pizza contest one year and then outraged half of the valley.
Facebook. I remember that.
Right? But he's also helping us with our free posters for the event. And Weirdo Wonderland is going to be a guest vendor at the show. So that's another add-on here. If you come down for the show Saturday night, you could also pick up some crazy stuff from Weirdo Wonderland, which does movie posters, all sorts of crazy collectibles, really into some old fantasy and horror paperbacks as well. But they always have a whole bunch of interesting stuff on hand.
Wow, that's
It's
amazing.
Weirdo Wonderland.
It's crazy, just Sci-Fi at the Strand alone, how much it's grown. You're almost like a little mini convention at this point. Are there any plans? Because you got the Armory as a beautiful new space, thanks to Griffin Hospital, who financed the renovation of the place. Are there any plans to bring? And I know there was a Comic-Con of sorts a couple of years back.
Yep.
But I mean, the big one, CT Horror Fest, which is happening in Naugatuck at the event center.
And they do an amazing job. Yeah, they do an amazing job.
Yeah, they became like a real. I mean, they're at the point where I'm not even welcome. They don't even want me there anymore because they don't need degenerates. But it'll be interesting though, because the Naugatuck Event Center, from what I heard, like they're trying to sell that, right? Don't they want that? They want that redeveloped. The borough there. Are you going to try?
Yeah,
is anything going on in Ansonia? I mean, any plans for any type
I'll
of
say
Comic-Con
this,
or-
we want to do more and more. And so I think the more space becomes available, we talk about things like, I don't know, this possible multi-sport, complex on Olson Drive. I don't know much about that, but I hear that's potentially going in there soon. To the extent that more space opens up in Ansonia and the Valley area, we want to fill it with great events and draw people in. I mean, the idea is that the Valley's been overlooked for a really long time. Why should this stuff be happening in the Valley? Why shouldn't it be happening in Ansonia, Derby, Seymour? It's really showing what we could do here and what we have to offer. Got a lot of creative people, a lot of great things going on. We got Valley Independent Sentinel, I think, putting a lot of publications out there to shame, right? With the quality.
Listen, I'm offended that you mentioned it after the Pint and Shocking Things. All right, but whatever. It's only been 11 years.
Yeah, well, it's priorities. It's priorities. This has got a great, the Valley's got Larry Dwyer, right? Is located not only doing it in the Valley, but also a Valley guy. So I think there's just so much great going on, and it's time the spotlight really got shifted over here.
All right, good. Yeah, there is a lot of cool stuff going on, and it's good to see. And I love that it's just this eclectic mix of stuff you wouldn't get anywhere else. It's not like a bunch of anarchists. I'm watching the HBO documentary, The Anarchists. Have you seen this?
No.
It's only in its second week. I highly recommend it. It's about these anarchists, right? These rich people who didn't want to pay taxes, so they moved to Acapulco. But then they were joined by like hippie anarchists, so it wasn't just, you had yuppie anarchists versus the hippie anarchists. And of course, eventually someone gets murdered. So I don't know why I brought that up. We don't want that coming to Ansonia. But anyway, no. See, now it's video. I can't edit any of this out. You get me in my raw, unfiltered stupidity. But all right, that's it, John. I hope people go.
Excellent.
And I like that that this is happening and that you come on and talk about it whenever it is happening. So best of luck.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me promo the show. And I'm sure we'll be talking one way or the other soon.
All right. See ya.
Take care.